Hi, morning guys, Matt Osborne here. Slightly different video today. I'm being videoed by someone else, so I'm going to be even more awkward than normal. Because we hit 9,000 subscribers, I tried to do something different and I've teamed up with the guys at Flints. We'll talk more about that later in the video. And I'd put a poll for any of you that are subscribers on YouTube to ask you which dream lenses were your kind of favourites and which ones did you want to see. So in first place we had the Leica Summilux 50mm 1.4 pre-aspherical that just beat the Canon 50 0.95 dream lens. Third place Canon 50 1.2, then very close fourth and fifth the Nikkor S 50 1.1 and the Nikkor S 50 1.4 Millenium. I've managed to do better than I probably expected, and we've managed to get the top 4 lenses and multiple copies of some of those lenses. So you guys are in for a treat, and so am I. So in front of us we've got a table where the guys at Flints have kindly got out for me some of the lenses that you wanted to look at, and we'll go through each one in turn and talk you through what we've got on the table. So exciting video. This would cost me a lot of money if I had to buy all this for myself, so feeling very grateful that I've got the opportunity to have a look and hopefully share it with you guys, and yeah, we can all enjoy it. So let's get started. So first place, if we do it in order, number 1 from those that I suggested was the Leica Summilux 50 1.4 pre-aspherical. So looking on the table, we've got 2 of them here. Whoa, don't touch anything. 2 of them here. So these are pre-aspherical, the difference being why have we got 2? One of them is Leica M mount and one of them is Leica screw mount or Leica thread mount LTM. I'll leave the lens cap on because it's fairly fitted, but you know what screw mount looks like. Generally speaking, the thread mount ones are more valuable than the M mount. I was trying to get a nod from the Flints. He says yes, correct, because they are the earlier ones. So if you ever see a thread mount and an M mount at the same price, if they're in the same condition, the thread mount is worth more. And this is also obviously true if you own both of these lenses. The advantage of having the thread mount is obviously you can use it on cameras like the Barnacks that I enjoy using, where with the M mount you're limited to obviously like M mount cameras. But in terms of size they're very similar, and obviously optically and everything else design, they're really very similar. So that was the first place. I've never actually used the, oh yes, sorry, being reminded here, we've also got a super special gold version. So this is a pre-aspherical Leica Summilux 50 1.4 on a gold M4 II. So I'll just give you a quick spin around. So this is a gold plated Leica, and they go for maybe two to £3,000 if you want a bit of bling in your life and you fancy a gold version for your street photography. You may need to carry a weapon at the same time to protect yourself, but this might be a bit too bling for me. But yeah, if you fancy some gold, they're not as expensive as I expected. I think if someone asked me how much would this be with it being gold, I probably would have guessed, I don't know, some silly number, maybe closer to 8,000-10,000. So I was quite surprised that that is lower than, well, it's closer to a normal price than you may think. Second place everyone wanted to see is the Dream lens. This is absolutely ridiculous. If I put it next to my head, so you probably don't really want to see a close up of my head, but it is quite large. Probably a better example that you probably rather look at. Many of you will know what a 50 1.4 looks like, Canon. So this is a standard Canon 50 1.4. This is on an early Canon rangefinder camera. I'll do a review of a camera a bit like this on a future video, so feel free to subscribe if you're not subscribed. I still need to do it. So 50 1.4, 0.95, and then for completeness, I need 3 hands. If I pop that in the box for a second. Right, so we've got 0.95 here. You have 1.2 in the middle, which is a lens you also voted for. And then you have the 1.4, the one I'm shaking, the smaller one. And then if you want to see, I've done a review of the 50 1.4 already. If I get a chance I can link it below, but if not, check the playlist. And then I've also done a review of the 1.2, the 1.8. Let's pop it down for a second. The 1.8 is even smaller than the 1.4, so It's a really nice sequence. You've got the smallest being the 1.8, then the 1.4. The 1.2 is similar to the 1.4. If we look at the depth as well, they're quite short, fat lenses, and they get kind of shorter and fatter. The bigger they get. I'll just show you now the 0.95 versus the 1.2. So as you can see, it's not a long lens, it's just a really wide lens to let that amount of light into the camera sensor. Now the problem with the 0.5, as some of you may know, the 1.8, the 1.4 and the 1.2 are like a thread mount, meaning you can fit these onto your Barnack or any screw mount camera, as you can hopefully see there. Whereas the problem with the 0.95 is because it was so large, it would basically rip the front off your camera if you used a screw mount. So it has a separate external bayonet. I think that's how you'd call it. It's a separate external mount. And so for that reason, you have to get them converted to M mount to be mounted onto your Leica M mount camera. If you can find an M mount one, obviously then you can shoot it on digital, whether you're a Leica shooter or Sony shooter or whatever. But if it's in this exact mount, you cannot mount it in this kind of state onto a digital camera. You'd have to get it converted. That's why we've got it mounted here on a Canon 7. Again, I've done a review on this rangefinder camera already. So that was second place and third place. I think just for practical sense, I probably wouldn't be tempted to buy 0.95 because I think it's just too big and impractical, but the 1.2 is a nice size. I'd definitely be tempted to kind of try that. Maybe we'll try that one later, and I'll include some sample images. And same again with the Summilux, perhaps we can try that, and again I'll include some sample images. See what we can do. I brought my M240 so we can do some digital testing. Okay, next we had the Nikon lenses. Now we didn't have a Millenium at hand, but more exciting, we have the 1.1. And we don't have one 1.1, we have two 1.1s. So here we have two Nikkor 50mm 1.1 lenses. And the difference is, if we look at the bottom, this is an internal bayonet fit lens, the earlier version. And this is an external bayonet fit lens, the later version. The reason they switched from internal to external was because the size of the lens, the same kind of problem they had with the Canon big lens here. If we want to compare size 0.95 versus 1.1, they went to external bayonet, Canon and Nikon, because these lenses are so big they needed kind of a more sturdy way to attach to the camera. So that's why they switched to the external fit for the Nikon. Again, if you want to compare what a normal 50mm normal looks like on a Nikkor, here's a Nikkor rangefinder. This is a Nikkor S2, I believe, black paint. Quite nice for the brassing, like you see on Leica cameras. Very nicely made cameras. I just find the rangefinder patches are nicer on Leica M cameras personally, but I know some people have said different. I've done a review of the S2 already. Nice camera, nice viewfinder. The patch is not quite so good. So here's a size comparison. 1.1 versus 1.4, I'm thinking. Yes, versus 1.4. If you hold that from the side, it is a much bigger lens. Now the advantage is, I don't have it to hand, but I'll do an insert. I did a review recently on a adapter which allows me to mount internal and external bayonet Nikkor S lenses onto a Leica. So you can use this on a Leica M rangefinder camera, and with rangefinder coupling you just need to buy the adapter. So if that's your thing, check out my Amadeo adapter video, and you can get this on your M10 or whichever is your preferred camera, Sony, whatever. So maybe we'll try one of those later. We'll see how we get on. So those, so those are normal 50 1.1s as requested in the poll. And then I'm smiling already off camera. This is an absolutely stunning lens. This is a 85 1.5. It's checking upside down, but it's a really special one because this is an error when it was being made in the factory, and it's engraved with, instead of saying 1.1.5, which is what it should say, if we just use 1 next to it. So here's a 1.1 next to it as a comparison. So where it says 1.1, this should say 1.5, but it's an error in the factory, and there's no dot, it's just 1.5, like 15. So for that reason it may be slightly more valuable, and obviously it's a rarer version because it's a mistake from the factory. So if you're into kind of collecting lenses, all these lenses are going up for auction at Flints. I'll tell you more about that at the end of the video. But yeah, if you like rare lenses, this is a rare lens, and it's also an extremely pretty lens. I think it's maybe even sexier than the 1.1 for the way the glass looks. So yeah, another lens. It could be amazing for portraits also, being an 8-5. As I say, this is also a Nikon S, and this is internal bayonet, or is it thread mount? Just have a look. Neither internal or external, but it's even probably more rare because it's a customized mount, which tend to be quite popular. Those are the lenses that you asked me to review, and we will try and do some example photos with the Leica M240. But we've also got even more special things to have a look at. So here is another early Nikon, just to kind of paint the picture of how Nikon has evolved. This was the first Nikon rangefinder camera, and I've never seen one of these before, and I really like the size of it. So this is an internal bayonet fit, 50mm. Oh, sorry, yeah. So it looks smaller from the outside. It looks a bit like an Almar 53.5 Leica, where you've got the bayonet inside like so, and then it collapses to an extremely small setup. So if we put this, would fit onto your S or S2, if that's the sort of camera that you've already got. Try and pop it back out. So there it is on the camera, and it gives a really nice small setup. So that's probably the smallest you're going to get from a Leica rangefinder camera in terms of standard design, and the lens that collapses like an Almar. I've done reviews on the Almars before, but feel free to check them out. This is the same 50 or 5cm 3.5 as you get with the Leicas. So yeah, I've never seen a lens that small made by Nikon, so I'm learning myself this morning. Okay, what else have we got on the table? If we maybe go across again, if you're a subscriber, then good news is I've got a Voigtlander sent me the new Voigtlander Nocturne 50 1.5 version 2. Now I've got this out, or asked the guys to get this out for me, because this is the 50 1.5 version 1, and so I'll do a separate clip for a separate video of this lens compared to the new lens, and we can see how the two compare. So if you subscribed, you'll see a full review on the Nocturne 50 1.5 in a separate video. Next to that, we have a really sexy lens for anybody. My friend in Hong Kong, I hope you're watching. This is a Super Speed Pancro, so I'm trying to read it upside down. And this has got to be one of the prettiest lenses I've ever looked into. The mount on this lens is sadly not one that we can use easily because it needs adapting. But this is again in the auction, and we think it might be listing for 20 to 30,000. So if you've done well on Bitcoin recently and you want to invest in some vintage glass, this is the lens you might be wanting to get from the auction. Absolutely stunning. I wish it was in thread mount so we could play with it today, but maybe if you have friends that are good at adapting lenses, it might be a good investment to get it adapted to your M10 or, as I say, whatever camera you use. So really nice lens. Talking of nice lenses, we've also got if we just pan across, one I missed, we've got a Noctilux 50 1.1 with the original box. And I've got the 50 1.0, but this is a smaller lens. It's a very nice design. It's got aperture clicks. Probably should have shown you that on some of the other lenses. I'm just asking, how much is this one worth?
15 to 20.
15 to 20,000.
Should make 25.
But may go as high as 25k. So again, if you've done well recently on your trading, or you've got lucky and won the lottery, you might like to get this lens. Another nice lens. Here it is with, let's say, with box, and it's got the original hood with the 1.2.
I sold it for £2,000 in the last sale.
Two for the hood.
Yeah.
These hoods are worth £2,000. So if you don't want to get a £5 one from eBay, from China, you could spend £2,000 on a proper one. It's much more solid than the cheap one that I found on buying it on eBay. And obviously the lens cap. Another special camera we've got, if we maybe go to the top next, we have a extremely sexy looking M4 black paint. And I think the black ones look really nice when they've got the white engraving like this. I've got a black M4P and a black M6, but mine don't have the white writing, and this does look nicer than mine. So if you'd like a mint condition M4 black paint, there's a shot of it from the back. It is completely immaculate, and this is a special one because it also comes with the box, but then it also has the passport. Now, none of my Leicas are complete in terms of with boxes and passports and things like this, but if you have the passport, it makes the camera much more valuable, as I understand it. I'm getting a nod from Flints. We think this one's going to go for over £3,000, so I think it's listing for £2,000 to £3,000. So I think for what it is, if you compare it to say a Leica M6 or an MP, I think it's actually quite good value if you want a complete kit, as I say, with the Leica passport. Check the auction if you're interested in that one. This is very nice, but if you want something slightly different, they also have a fire damaged Leica M4. Now, we're having a debate about this morning before making the video, and the question we have is, we're wondering if it's worth barbecuing your beloved Leica M camera and seeing if it's going to be more valuable barbecued than it is in kind of a standard condition. So if you're interested on whether a barbecued Leica camera with lens is worth more than a standard lens, follow the auction. Again, I'll link it at the end, and we can see how much this one's going to go for. Just give you a bit of information. This one's actually from a house fire, as I understand it, and it was recovered. And yeah, I wouldn't wish this on anybody's Leica, but equally, if it's going to add value, then we're interested in whether it is actually worth sticking it on the barbecue next to the sausages to increase the value of your Leica camera. So yeah, something different. It's interesting how all the engraving and everything is obviously still complete, but just shows that the solid cameras. If you did that with a plastic, nothing against Sony's or Fuji's or anything, but if you did that with a plastic composite camera, Nikon, Canon, you're just going to have a blob of plastic, and you're not going to have a still fully formed camera. I think we've covered most of the things on the table. One thing I keep promising, I'll just cover it. I've been promising for ages to do the Voigtlander Heliar 50 3.5 video. Now I've actually got the M mount, which is like a strange kind of conical shape. I'll maybe show a photo. And then I've also got the 101 anniversary version. This is the Heliar 50 3.5 thread mount, which you can get when you buy Voigtlander Beta T cameras. So I got mine with the Voigtlander Beta T 101 anniversary, and this is the lens. If I take the cap off, I like this lens because it collapses like a Elmar 50 3.5. If I twist it, and if you take the hood off, I find I tend not to use the hood because it doesn't really need it. So without the hood, it's quite a small lens, and I find this gives one of the best kind of image quality you can get from, say, a small Barnack camera. If you want a collapsible setup, it's not quite as small as an Elmar. If you watch my sharpest 50mm video, I compared I think 5 50mm lenses, and this is included on that video. But I will do a proper review comparing it to the, as I say, the M mount. The main difference being this is a 0.9 close focus and the M mount is 0.7. So for portraits for me, the M mount's better. But when I'm shooting with Barnacks, I prefer this one for travel. So yes, that will come in a future video. And if you want, this one's actually also in the auction. So if you want a fully boxed version, check out the auction. Very nice lens, and extremely, Heliars always tend to be good optically, but they are extremely nice. So I think that's it from everything on the table. We'll have a walk around, and then I'll try and come back to you later on, tell you a bit more about the auction, and I'll try and get out, test some of the lenses, and then include some sample images to show you what some of these lenses can do. But one lens I forgot, there's also the black paint Summicron 50 f2. Now you may think Summicron 50 f2 is a standard lens, maybe £1,000 for a standard one, but because this one's black paint, it's much more valuable. I believe this one is 7 to 10,000. I'm smiling because it's surprising. If you saw two black lenses on eBay, one's a standard black lens and one's a black paint, just because it's black paint. If it sells at 10,000, then it's 10 times more valuable than the standard the standard one that I use, the version 5. So again, if you like your black paint, if you've got your black paint Leica, and if you want the, say, black M4, black M4, thinking of my own M4P, and a black paint lens to go with your black paint camera, this could be your next setup. Exciting times. Flints have opened the cupboards for the cabinets for me, so we can take a closer look at some of the what they have on offer or at the auction. We'll just go through some of them. There's obviously a lot of nice things here, and I can't afford all of them or most of them. So top shelf, we've just got a small sample of some of the box Leica M cameras they've got, M2, M5. I've never actually shot an M5. I like M2s for 35mm. I love my M3 because I'm a 50mm shooter. And this is another M3 in a slightly different box. If we now go down onto these other shelves, these are called kind of Leica copies, we could call it. And it's surprising how many different brands or how many different manufacturers made copies of Leicas. So I'm probably going to kill this, so excuse me if I'm saying it wrong. And if I start with an easy one, because I can say that, this is a Reid camera. So this is British made Leica copy. If I just pick it up quickly. It's very similar to an early Barnack where you've got the viewfinder and no rangefinder. And there you can see, if I show you properly, where it says Reid, and I'm going to kill this, Sigrist, I believe it is, limited. So, and then on the back here, this is a military camera, so this is the military number. So yeah, a bit of history for it. And there's the Reid again, engraved on the top. So these are nice cameras, and they're more valuable than the Leicas that they're kind of copies of, you could call it. Those are flash ports on the front, if you're wondering. So I can say this is the look camera. I won't get them all out, but we can have a look at a few of them. No pun intended. This one's slightly different because it's got gearing, so I won't move it, but it's a little bit like a, say, Contax RF rangefinder camera or a Nikon S mount rangefinder camera, where they have the gearing on the top, so you can use the gearing to turn the lens rather than just turning the lens as we would say on a Leica M or Leica Barnack camera. It's really interesting to see all the different designs where they're all more or less based on an early Leica camera. So this one's called, I believe, a Kristall. If you want a bit more bling in your life, it's interesting how the different countries and kind of different designers put their own kind of flair on the different cameras based on, I guess, their own taste. Maybe comparing it like an Italian sports car to a Japanese sports car, or whatever your kind of take on it is. I believe this one is a Janua. All of these cameras have the standard 50 or 5 centimeters, it was called back then, 50 3.5 lenses. They're all just slightly different, but they're all based on the same design. We've also got, what have we got? Canon, slightly more common. Kardon. These are both Kardons. You can see there. Slightly different design, and a slightly different lens design as well. Oh, it's the Hektor.
Yes.
So there we can see military, US Army. And if I show you this one, it pays you to always look on the back of the camera. If you're looking at pictures on whether it's auctions or eBay, there's they look very similar from the front, or probably near identical. But when you look on the back, you can tell you've got one military, one ex-military. So if you've got kind of history with the military and that's kind of important to you, you may prefer to obviously get the military one rather than a standard copy. At the back is something interesting. This is a Nikkor S 50mm f1.4 lens, like I use on my Nikon S2. The main difference is this is a Leica thread mount, meaning it will fit onto obviously bayonet fit Leicas such as this Barnack copy. These tend to be more expensive than the Nikon S mount because they're more desirable, because a lot of people like using thread mount lenses and M mount lenses. But you can get those on eBay. They do the 50 f1.4 and there's also the 50 f2. I've got the f2, I would need to do a video on that at some point. The f2s are nice because it will close focus to closer than normal distance, and I believe the same on this one. Yes, so this one will go down to 2 feet. where a standard 50mm lens will only go down to around 3.5 feet, 1 meter. I was brought up on meters, so I get mixed up with the feet, but they're nice because if you like doing portraits, that lens will go closer than all these other lenses in this, as I understand it, on this shelf, because of the design that let you go as close as 0.5 meters. If we go down to the next shelf, I won't go through every camera, but one nice one that stands out. This is a Ilford Witness. They had one of these when I last visited. This is a slightly different one, but very, very nice lens. Dallmeyer Super Six Anastigmat 50 1.9. So from the outside, when the lens is on the camera, it looks like it wouldn't fit a Leica, which would be my first kind of impression. But when you actually take the lens off, it's got a what's called an interrupted screw mount. So it's a screw mount on the back, which means you can mount it to like a thread mount camera, but then it has the kind of almost extra mount on top, which lets it fit onto the Witness. I may have said this the last time I visited Flints, but I believe this is one of the nicest designed hot shoes I've probably ever come across, in terms of normally a hot shoe, if I find a common one, normal hot shoe or cold shoe, I'll say hot shoe. I'm sure people will be shouting in the comments, it's a cold shoe. There's a standard one on the top, where it's just like a bit of metal staple screwed to the top of your camera, where this is how to make the same functionality, but so much better designed. I guess this was a Apple iPhone of its time, in terms of ahead of the game with the technology and their design. So yeah, I think people that like the finer things in life might like the design of that. We've got a lot more Leica copies here. A camera which you may see on sometimes on eBay, Leotax. They're quite popular or quite common. There's also the Nikkor, which is the one I've got, which again, they're very similar to the early Barnacks. You've got pretty much identical rangefinder, viewfinder windows, your shutter dial, everything's really, really similar. If you kind of did it blindfolded or took that off, you'd probably think it was a Leica. They are that similar. And then the nice cameras. Another Leotax, slightly different. This one's called a Son. It looks a bit different. Reminds me a little bit more of perhaps a former Soviet Union camera with the big viewfinder. Maybe something like I'm trying to think which one it is. Zorki 5 or 6. Or
3G.
Oh yeah, or 3G. But if you compare that to the Leotax, the window is so much bigger. Just to show you the difference. I know some of you complain about Barnacks because you don't like the size of the viewfinder. Get a Son and that resolves that issue. This one's slightly different. I've not seen one of these before. This is a Canon rangefinder, but it's got a slightly different design. Is this pop-up?
Get a push.
Oh wow. This is me learning during the video. So if we show you how this works, you give it a little push and it goes flush for the camera, and then there's a little small button on the back of the camera under the accessory shoe. Press that, so I believe you've got rangefinder on the left, and then viewfinder pops up on the top. So rather than having, if we just compare that to say a Leotax, which is very similar to a Barnack, this is more like a Leica, where you have a rangefinder on the left, viewfinder window on the right. Where, if I just pop that down a second, Canon did it slightly different, rangefinder on the left, but pop-up window on the right. So if you want something different, then again, this is also different because you've got some gearing on the front, similar to the camera we looked at a second ago. And it's also a Nikkor lens. This is a 5cm 3.5. Sorry if it's a bit dark. This is again a similar design to the Elmar, so it's a collapsible. These are collapsible 50mm lenses, like on the Elmars, which I rave about so often. But it's similar to the early Nikon and Contax RF mount kind of design, where you've got the helicoid built onto the camera and then an internal bayonet style lens design. So very nice kind of nicely put together camera. Now, last one on this shelf is something a bit special. This is called a stereo camera, I believe, because it has two lenses. And to kind of appreciate this camera through kind of what it can do, first of all, I guess it's like a copy of a Barnack in terms of on the back of the camera you could expect it to be a Barnack in many regards, with the rangefinder, the viewfinder, I was getting wrong, and the dials and things on the top. the advance and the rewind, everything's all the same. The difference being, this has two lenses, as I say, so it's a stereo camera. And if I just grab a example of what this could do, or this type of camera can do. Now this is a 1850s approximately. If I hold it still, maybe the camera, or if I tilt it slightly, whether the camera can pick it up or not. This is a early stereo camera, daguerreotype. Good spot the an educated person in the room. Daguerreotype. So it's metal. It's photo onto metal, as I understand it. And the way it works is the two lenses. Well, my understanding is the two lenses give an overlapped image, and that will help to create an early kind of 3D type photo. I don't think I would have expected 3D to be going back to the 1800s. So, as I say, I'm learning a lot today myself. So, it's amazing. If you look kind of, I'm not sure you can see it on camera, but the detail in this photo is ridiculous. Like if you did this today and showed someone that you just made this with your digital camera, you could impress people. But
and the 3D looks literally 3D.
It's
crazy good.
You can't appreciate how much detail is both obviously in front and back. It's really impressive, and the thought that this was 1800s is just kind of quite mind-boggling. We haven't come as far forward as maybe we think sometimes when you see how clever people were and what the capabilities were of cameras like this, like Leicas, Barnack Leicas are early 1930s through to 1950s. So this is before all of these cameras by quite a margin. So it's kind of hats off to the early photographers and their skill level. It really does show what you can do without an iPhone before iPhones were invented. So yeah, really nice to see that. I've never seen one of these before, so really interesting. But now we have another cabinet. I won't dwell on every single one, but there are some nice things to look at. Oops, trying to break the room. So top shelf. It is literally like top shelf. The sexy ones on the top shelf. These are black Barnack cameras, for any of you that don't know. And can any of you guess which any of them are? Some of them are easier to identify than others. Easy ones, I guess, at a glance would be, this is an early one because you've got no rangefinder, only a viewfinder, such as the black Barnack 1C I've just bought. I believe this is a 1A.
1A.
Yeah, these are Leica 1As. I'll do a review of my Leica 1C, which is very similar in kind of at first glance when I get a chance. The main difference is if the circle of the lens mount is chopped off, this means this is a fixed lens design, so you cannot take this lens off. Another easy way to look is it has kind of a hockey stick design on the left of the lens. If you compare that to, say, this one, so this is a lens more like mine where you can unscrew it and then fit it onto your, if you've got multiple Barnack cameras, you could fit this onto your other Barnack camera. These lenses you cannot take off. So if it's rounded on the top, it's normally interchangeable. If it's flat on the top, it's not interchangeable. One thing that I was educated on this morning, at first glance, both of these cameras look very similar. But for those of you with a keen eye, this is why some people can pick up a bargain and some people maybe miss it. Can you see the difference between the camera on the left and the camera on the right? If we look more closely at the lens itself, if I maybe do it from the side, can you see that the lens on the left is not as extended as the lens on the right? And in kind of simple terms, when you extend the lens away from the sensor, that means you can focus closer. And the way you can tell is on the top of the camera, this pin is longer than the pin in my left hand. That means this is a close focused fixed lens like a Barnack camera. This is a standard, I guess, range fixed lens Barnack camera. So the close focus ones are more, as I understand, more rare and less common to find, and so should go for a higher price. In terms of for myself, for portraits, this would be ideal for me because I can focus closer than the standard 1 meter limited distance that I'm used to with Barnack cameras. One thing to be aware of, these cameras don't have a rangefinder, these are just viewfinders only. So you have a viewfinder here, and then you'd have a rangefinder kind of stick, as you could call it, that goes onto the hot shoe. you would need a rangefinder which is calibrated to a close focus lens to be able to use a close focus lens and it to be accurate. It's also worth noting that this lens will also focus to infinity, so you do have full range of movement. This is your infinity lock, so you push that down if the camera can pick it up. It's like a sprung piece of metal that allows you to then go past infinity to close focus, and you can see the amount of travel on that lens. It's much further than on a standard Leica M4 lens. So yeah, really interesting to see. I've never seen one of these, and I'm making notes for when I'm next on eBay, so I know which camera is potentially worth more than another camera, or which camera could be more useful to me than another camera. Close focus I quite like the idea of. Some of the others are more common designs. These are Leica 2 and Leica 3 design where you have the built-in rangefinder and viewfinder. Oh, this is a 3 because you've got the slow speed. So what that means is you have on a, let me find a different one. Have we got any others? No. If you look at, if you see some of my other videos, if you have a patch here, it's basically a black circle. I'll put a photo on the screen to show you. So on the screen at the moment is a Leica 2F, which is my own camera, and you see a circular patch. Then on the camera that I'm holding in my hand, like live in the video, this has got a button or a dial on the front. The way this works is, if your shutter speed needs to be lower than 1/20, so 20th of a second, you then need to set it on the front of the lens. So on the front of the lens you have 1 second up to 20th of a second. So if you want to use the slow speed, you'd set the top speed to 20-1, and then you'd set it to say 4/4 of a second, 1/8 of a second, 20th of a second on the front. So that's how those work. It's very similar to my Leica 3A silver camera which I have, which I've already done a video of where I compare it against a Leica 3G, which is the one with the bigger viewfinder. All the others are reasonably similar. I guess one thing to point out, if you want to know the difference between nickel and a kind of standard, this is a nickel colour. So that's a nickel black paint with nickel, which is like the 1A, 1C that I just bought. This is a standard silver, so that's the difference in colour. If you see that colour, it's not tainted normal one, this is nickel, not nickel, if you're wondering the difference. The advantage of the later ones is you have your built-in rangefinder. The early ones you need your stick rangefinder to go on the top, so it's kind of a bigger setup if you're going to use a rangefinder. That's why these are probably slightly more common. And obviously the later ones, so they should be cheaper as well. We've got a few Leica M cameras here on the left. This is a Leica Post camera. Sometimes I see these on eBay because they have very easy to spot. They're a fixed lens. If we can get the lens cap off carefully. They're a fixed lens design. Usually, I think they're all Summirons 35 2.8, and they're on a plate, which meant they mounted in the post office onto these mounts, as I understand it. And it's fixed lens with no rangefinder, no viewfinder. So it's kind of more of a collector's piece than kind of a user's camera, because it has limited use. You can't really do a huge amount with it. But if you normally see those, talking from experience, you normally find those if you search for Summiron 35 2.8. That's when you'll see this camera a lot of the time on eBay, if you're kind of finding it by accident. In the back, if the camera can spot it, we've got a Leica M4 with passport. I don't own an M4, and the main kind of observation is if you compare it to an M2, kind of from the outside of the camera, the M2's got the original metal lever, the same as on the M3, which I quite like, whereas the M4's got the newer style at the time, which is the ones with the plastic end, which is the same on my M4P and my M6. I much prefer the proper levers, as you could call it, and this is what they fitted on the MA, I believe, when they realised that people wanted the proper levers, so that's what that is. This is a Summicron 50 f2, and next to it we have a very nice Summilux 50 1.4. So you can see the difference, lens size difference. It's a much bigger lens, getting a 1.4 aperture compared to an f2 aperture, and it's quite a bit more weight to the lens as well. So, oh yeah, one thing to point out, I forgot myself, that's how good this copy is. If you see a Leica on eBay and it happens to be really cheap, or you go to, say, I don't know, a store, over abroad and they're trying to sell a camera to you cheap, and you can't see it close up and you can kind of see it from the distance I'm looking at, maybe half a metre. You're like, very nice, I'll buy that because it's only £500. If you then pick it up, first thing you should notice is it's slightly lighter, but then if you look at the viewfinder, you can see straight through, there's no internals in the viewfinder. And if you look on the top, although it looks perfect at first glance, you cannot move the shutter dial. Film Advance moves, but there's no kind of internals. The way you can tell is these have an A at the end, which is German for Attrapp, and that basically shows that it's a dummy camera. So I could, talking kind of in all honesty, I could have very easily bought this thinking it was a real one, and got home and then realised there's nothing inside the camera which can make photos, despite it looking very nice and very authentic from the outside. This is all really similar to kind of my own M2. I would have totally fell for it. So if you see an A on the top of a Leica, that is a dummy camera, so make a note, it may save you thousands of pounds. If you see it really cheap and it's got an A on, that's because it's a dummy camera. Even though it's a dummy camera, it's maybe worth pointing out, this is still a £400 camera. So may not be as cheap as you think, but if you're only buying cameras to put behind you on your YouTube videos, this may be a cheaper option to pretend that you're a Leica shooter than actually buying the real thing. Pity Rolleiflex didn't do that, because I know everyone likes having the Rolleiflexes in their YouTube videos. I've just been told that Flints has told me that Rolleiflex also did the dummy cameras. So if you are a YouTuber and you do like the idea of having a prop behind you in your studio, just buy a dummy Rolleiflex or a dummy Leica and save yourself a few pennies. Before we leave this shelf, I've got one very special one to show you. This is actually a cigarette lighter that works, and it's also got a built-in camera called a Petie. It's got a 60mm sub-miniture camera. I imagine for those cigar smokers back in the day, this is a very cool way to take some sneaky pictures and light up at the same time with the people that you're hanging around with when drinking coffee or wine or whatever your tipple is. So yeah, if you want a small camera and something a bit different, I'll just show you a couple more and then we can finish. On this shelf we've got black paint Nikon SPs. You can tell they're SPs by I think the colours on the dial and the longer viewfinder kind of rangefinder window. I've got the S2, and they don't have the same design window. They made the black paint the same as the Leica black paints because they're popular for journalists, because they're kind of a bit more stealthy than having kind of a camera that glints in the sun when you're trying to take subtle pictures. This is different from a standard Nikon SP because it's got the motor drive built in. So it's very, very similar to what you got later on with my cheap and cheerful Nikon FG20, or perhaps the Nikon F5. You could think of this as an early Nikon F5 with built-in motor drive. A lot smaller and a lot lighter than my Nikon F5, and you can see the controls on the back and everything. Very nice camera, and I know some of you like the black paint and kind of brassing look, so I think sometimes they age quite nicely if you're into your black paint. So yeah, that's one with the motor drive. We've also got some Nikon rangefinder lenses here. I do have this lens, and I'll maybe review it one day. I just need to use it more first. This is a Nikkor W35 f3.5. I've got the 2.5. Very similar. So these are external bayonet lenses that will fit onto the Nikon rangefinder cameras. So if I just quickly show you. So a lens will either be internal bayonet, so it's going to go inside, or external bayonet, and it's going to clip onto the outside here. So if we line it up, hopefully it will go on for us. There we go, perfect. So these give a nice small setup. I'm a big fan of these early Nikkor lenses because they are so small, and they have nice optics as well. So yeah, the advantage of I think the S3 and the SP is, I'm just going to look through the viewfinder. This one may only have a 50mm frame line, but I think the S3's got 35mm, so then you could use a 35mm line. Then you could use your 35mm lens with the 35mm frame line to compose for 35mm. We've also got the 35mm f2.5. This is a slightly different model to the one I think I've got. We have a Nikkor, oh this is a one that I spoke about earlier on, Nikkor HC50F2. So I've got the Nikkor HC50F2 rigid, but this is the earlier version, which is a collapsible design, like so. This is thread mount, so will fit onto your, let's say, Barnack Leicas, Leica 3 cameras, or your Leica M cameras via the standard LTM to M adapters, which I've talked about in other videos. It's a nice size and it feels very solid. I think I'm a big fan of these collapsible lenses to give a smaller kind of setup. Before we just quickly finish, if you didn't see the video of my Amadeo adapters, this is an early version. It's the same idea, it's allowing you to mount Nikon lenses, as we just saw here, such as this one, onto your Leica thread mount camera. So this is available at the auction if you've not already got one and you saw my video and like the idea of using, as I say, Nikkor or Contax or f-mount lenses on your Leica camera. I think that's more or less all we've got here. Sports finder, yeah, a few more bits and bobs on the bottom, but yeah, an amazing range of things available. I don't really know where to look. There's a lot of nice things in this room. Okay, I'll come back to you later on. That's all for now. Bye. Do you want to wait? You going? Time is money. You could have guessed we're not in Coventry. I've come to somewhere nice to test lenses. Brought some of the nice lenses that we looked at this morning. Josh is now joining us from Flints and will be our model for the day, and basically going to do some test shots. And then we can see which each of these fast lenses can do. Brought my reflector as a prepared portrait photographer. The sun's shining, so it should be quite good. And we can try to see how the lenses flare, and then also try and get some really nice kind of shallow depth of field. Quickly show you the rig we're going to use to test the lenses on. Professional lens cap to start off with to protect your fast lens. I'm using my standard Leica M240, then I've got the Olympus EVF or VF2, and that's going to work because some of these lenses won't be rangefinder coupled because we've got them on adapters, and one of the adapters is not rangefinder coupled. So I can use live view through the viewfinder, and that will allow us to get focus shots. And then if I want to use the rangefinder, I've got my 1.4 magnifier, which allows me to critically focus. I'm going to shoot the lenses at or close to wide open, and I hope it's not going to be too bright. I'm going to shoot at 4,000th of a second ISO. Normally use ISO 200 because I think that's the base ISO on an M240, but I might have to use ISO 100 because it's too bright. Josh is going to kindly model for us. What I'm doing is, if it's too bright to shoot your lens and you've got a fast lens and you don't have an ND filter, if you have the sun behind the model, you can still do your shots and not overexpose them. See what it can do. The focus on this lens is ridiculous. I'm not turning, no, just turning and turning and turning. It's like it's coming very slowly. Right, you've got a nice glow. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I'm shooting in RAW, but in black and white preview, so it looks kind of black and white. The EVF does. I'm just looking for better bokeh behind it. The EVF does make it quite slow. Okay, nice, and yeah. So slow. What if you put your hood up? All I'm doing is protecting the light from your head. I'm using it for the light. This is better. You get some nice swirl now with a better background. At the moment it's wide open. I'm going to try it now. So this is at 1.1 and it is probably a little bit too soft for my taste. So I'm going to try it at 1.4. And again, the problem with the live view, I'm not sure if you can hear it on the microphone, because there's such a delay, sometimes the model has time to blink while you're trying to take the photo. So rangefinders have their benefits using it as a rangefinder. Okay.
Oh, cool. God, my beard looks crazy. That's lovely.
So that's wide open.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of swirl. I'll
cool.
share an image on the screen. Please excuse my sock. I was trying to pad my adapters out. Hektor 73 1.9. Basically a cheap thambar. If you can't afford £5,000 for a thambar, £600 to £800 for a cheap thambar. I'm going to ask the gentleman across the canal if I can take his picture. Wait 1 second. Morning there. Excuse me. Good morning. Would you mind if I take your picture? You have an amazing look, and we're testing our vintage cameras and lenses for YouTube. Oh yeah, okay. Do you want me to push on this side? You don't need to go to the gym, do you? If I want to take your picture, shall I come round on the other side? Sorry, you oh yes, so yep, okay. Just give me 1 second. This is lovely. Oh, wait 1 second. Wait there, I'll get more of you in. Try not to fall down the thing. There you go. Should have had the 50. Okay, 1 minute. Beautiful. And wait there. Just come on. Perfect. Amazing. Okay. And then if you just look past me, that's it. Beautiful. These are vintage. These boys work at the auction house down the road, and they sell a lot of very desirable cameras and lenses.
Oh, I see. Right. Oh, well.
So this is very, it suits your look perfectly.
Yeah, the great British workman.
Yeah. Do you have an Instagram or something, email? Because I can send it to you.
Yeah, I've got
when I get home.
I've got an email address, yeah.
Okay. Don't use an EVF if you're trying to be quick, because they're just too slow. Is this rangefinder coupled?
Yes.
Oh. I've been using the EVF because the last lens wasn't rangefinder coupled, but this one is. So now I'm using the rangefinder, and it's taking the EVF off, because if you're trying to use both, this sticks in your head. So it brings up the, I believe it's the 90mm finder. You can hear it's still slow because live view's on. Turn live view off, and then it's much faster. Nice. So I'm shooting this at 2.2 for record. I wish I was shooting film with that other guy. It's just absolutely amazing. I'm just trying to think, so you could have your legs dangling. I'm just thinking.
Oh yeah, my legs can dangle like that, no problem. Probably like, yeah, that's fine.
Just for the shape and everything. That's it. Okay. You might be outstaged by the camera in this shot. So you get a lot of lens flare in this one. So if you can see what I'm doing, I'm just using a simple hand over lens effect to protect the lens, because I don't have a lens hood with me. I don't feel quite so bad chopping you off there. And get you in a bit. Nice, thanks. See, these focus fast lenses when you've got lines such as on the camera, because it's very easy to find something to focus on. Getting a little bit of haze, so I'm trying to move my hand to guesstimate where the lens. This is where you need film loaded. You can shoot back at me. There's a few different versions of. The side's quite nice. So this is with my hand protecting the lens, and there's flare without the hand over the lens. So all of this is flare. So if you see that and you're using a vintage lens, that's an easy way to get around the problem without kind of having to give up or hiding from the sunshine. We've changed lenses. We've now got the Ilford Witness lens, which is LTM mount, on my M240 and we test that next.
Full turn.
Oh, so I don't
Just
need to use
quite still.
infinity.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Cool.
Super 6 on the M240. Josh, do you want to sit on here? Right, she's in it wide open at 1.9. This is the Dallmeyer Super Six Anastigmat. That's good. It looks nice and sharp actually. This would be good on film. Stay there a sec. So I'm going even lower to get full body. Ooh, this is good. I think you might make my page, Josh. And then bring the foot that's out back to the railing a bit, so like shuffle back, that's it. Perfect. Okay, one sec, let me just refocus. Nice. It's not often I'm happy taking photos of blokes, so that means it must be good. It's more the camera. Don't tell Josh. Jokes.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's really good. Well done. Nice.
Don't know if the camera will see it. This lens won't focus to infinity. We can see how close you can get. I'm just trying to think how to, I'll maybe do a close-up view, like this much of the camera, and then just the railings behind. So if you maybe do something like a bit like you were doing before, and then I'm just going to get I just want to see how close it'll get. That's fine. Wait there, just going to perfect it. Okay. Just going to wedge that next to you.
The waterproof, that is amazing.
Free tan from two sides.
Yeah.
Right, focusing on the word roll reflects on the front of the camera.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
What we're playing with now, we've got the Primoplan 1.9 75mm with hood, so it looks bigger than it actually is. The lens is only this big. It's not rangefinder coupled thread mount lens, so I'm going to use a EVF. Josh, can you pretend to do another shot and I'll get you. This is a softer lens than the last one. I'm going to stop it down a little bit because it's a tiny bit too, it's f4. Because it's a tiny bit too soft, it's f4. I'm going to try f1, see 1.9, see if it's any better. Right, I'll do 2.8 as well. Wow, this one goes super close. Bad news, Josh. So I'm zooming in on the top of the writing on the lens itself. This is good, should be a good shot actually. It's going to diagonal on the, okay, yeah, and go. Nice. You want to see? It's quite a nice close up with the old lens.
It's very nice.
If you want to make your models look good, just buy a vintage lens. No offence. And give them a nice camera to hold. Joking. Right, that was at 2.8 in the sharpness. Up close it's quite nice at 2.8. I found it a little bit soft, 1.9. Beautiful M2, cleaner one than mine. The lens is a really nice lens actually. I've never used a 35 f2. It's very crisply focused, a very glowy lens. Yeah, we tried a few in flat light. When there's more contrast, it will make a softer lens look sharper to kind of the apparent sharpness. So when you do soft lens in soft lighting, it tends to look almost too soft if you're not careful, just from my experience. Thank you to Josh for modelling and to Flints for providing the props and the lenses that we're testing. Okay, we'll go back and see what else they've got. So I guess a big thank you to Flints for sponsoring this video. They kindly let me play with all these lovely lenses and show you some of the cameras we've got in front and behind me. If you want to buy these cameras and lenses yourself or take a look, you need to visit Flints Fine Photographic Auction on the 29th of April, starting at 12 noon British Standard Time. And to get more details, you need to visit www.flintsauctions.com, and then you'll get full information on how to bid, how to do all the detailed stuff. So rather than me make a terrible attempt at telling you all the details, just check out the website and you can take it from there. Okay, thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.